All right, Zach, we're up. Now, please pray with me. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, in case you didn't know, Zach and I just returned from a 2-week trip to India. Zach's got his nice stole here that was a gift from the people. This is from a Buddhist temple, Tibetan Buddhist village or compound that we saw while we were there. Now, I have to say, I have one pro tip that I should give you from coming back from India. If you were to choose a time of year to go to India, mid-June is not the time of year to go. As we were sweating profusely in the mid-90s weather that was humid, I remember turning to some of the Indians and being like, gosh, this is hot. And they looked at me and they said, hot? This isn't hot.
It's nothing.
Nothing. Now, for some of you who don't know, you might be wondering, why on earth were we traveling to India? What's there? Well, this is a wonderful story of this congregation, and it goes back to the 1990s. Back in the 1990s, one of our associate clergy, Pash Obang, the Reverend Dr. Pash Obang, spent a sabbatical in India doing research. Pash had his PhD, was an academic, is an academic, doing research on African diaspora communities. And he ran across or discovered an African diaspora community that he wasn't familiar with before called the Siddhi community, located in southwest India. This is a community of roughly 40,000 people, so a fairly small group among a country of 1.4 billion. 40,000 people who are descendants of those who were brought over as slaves by the Portuguese back in the 16th century. And this is a group of people that over time have been heavily discriminated against and marginalized. And Pash studied this community, wrote one of the first academic books about this community, and also encouraged this congregation to get involved in supporting them. From those early days, we have worked with the Jesuits who are in the area, and also the Sisters of Mercy of the Holy Cross, who provide direct services that you'll hear more about in a moment to the Siddhi community.
The Siddhis, for hundreds of years, have been the victims of racial discrimination, and they exist under the caste system within India as a sub-caste group. And because of that, they've not had access to education, healthcare, basic resources. This is a community who has endured long suffering and continues to experience racial discrimination in India. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Some of the poverty that we saw among the Siddhis in India were some of the most intense poverty that I've ever seen. I'm sure Jonathan as well. Not having access to education and healthcare, as I mentioned, but also things like clean water and electricity, just things that we take for granted. And it's tempting when you are met with the fact of human suffering, with the fact of disparity of access to things that we take for granted. It's tempting to say, we can't fix it, so what's the point of even trying? It's tempting to say, we couldn't fix this if we had 100 lifetimes trying to fix it, and so why should I bother? It's tempting to say, I'm just going to take care of myself, going to store up treasures in my own barns. I'm not going to worry about trying to help other people. That's the temptation that we face.
Now, one of the things that's good to celebrate about this ministry over there is the tremendous work that you all have supported over 20 plus years in India. Rather than storing up treasure in our barns, rather than trying to say, well, we'll put it aside for some later time, you all have been incredibly generous in so many ways to the Siddhi people through the African Indian Alliance, which is the nonprofit the church helped set up about 15 years ago to do this important work. This really is a manifestation of living into the passage that Nancy read earlier from Luke 12, of trying to store up our treasures not on earth where moth and rust consume, but store up our treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not consume. For where our treasure is, there our hearts will be also. It was interesting, we had chosen this text before we went over there. And while we were there, we were staying with the Jesuits. And every morning the Jesuits had worship at 7 a.m. And we'd go to Mass at 7 a.m.
7 a.m.
Yeah, 7 a.m. 7 a.m. Zach, you're only late one day. I mean,
The first day I showed up at 7:30.
must have been a time change issue. So it just so happens that the services that week were all focused on the Sermon on the Mount. And as you know from the Sermon on the Mount, there is the Matthew version of our Lucan text, where again it says, do not store up for your treasures on earth where moth and rust consume, but store up for them in heaven where moth and rust do not consume. So it was interesting that we sat there in worship listening to the same passages that we had been thinking about to preach on, one of those God moments. Now, the other thing as we were heading over there, I didn't want to bring a book that would weigh me down. So Zach, we found out at our staff retreat, Zach is a member of staff, by the way, who reads by far the most number of books a year. And this is in part because he listens to audiobooks on his long commute here and back to Central Mass every day. But I knew that he had a lot of good recommendations, so I said, Zach, what book should I read for the long flights? And he recommended this book called Against the Machine, which ended up being a theme for our time over there. This book, Against the Machine, came out in the past year, and the machine, as his author puts it forth, is the capitalist society in the West that focuses on consumption and individual worth and an uprootedness that consumes all of us. It's something that's all-consuming in society, no matter who you are, no matter where you fall on a political spectrum, no matter where in society you are, the machine just sort of keeps gobbling up all of the oxygen in the room. And this author talks about how, the machine, which again, promises you if you just have more stuff, you'll be happy, or if you have individual success, you'll be happy. The machine has left us with communities that are miserable, uprooted, lost, levels of depression and other issues in our society. And the author says what we really need is community. What we really need is prayer and God. What we really need is a sense of the past, a sense of who we are as people. And this is the very stuff that the city community were doing right there, trying to build community. The fathers and the sisters were doing, and us, what we were doing is trying to build that community. So it was interesting to be reading that text and then trying to live it out while we were there.
There's a real potential for our congregation to have an outsized impact among this very small community in India. And part of the reason is because we are, even if you are not individually a wealthy person, by virtue of living in America, you have an extraordinary amount of wealth compared to the people who we experienced in South India. One thing that really drove this home was when we flew into the city of Hubli. We were jet lagged, y'all. It took like 30 hours to get there. My rear end is still sore from having to sit that long. We decided to get some breakfast. There were 7 of us there, including Gary and Donna McCabe's daughter, Katie. And we ordered breakfast for 7 of us. And I was kind of doing the little thing that I've always done, just like, oh man, how much is this going to cost? And how are we going to split this bill? Are we going to be able to pool our cash? Is someone else going to pay for it? Am I going to feel bad because someone else is paying for it? We got the bill at the end, and it was 1,200 rupees, which sounds like a lot. That was $12 for 7 people to have as much food as we could
Everything on the
possibly
menu. We basically ordered everything on the menu.
$12. Another thing that kind of drove this home was one of the best things that you could possibly do in India is to go to an Indian barber. It's one of my favorite things to do. This is my 2nd trip in India. Yeah, believe it or not, I don't really need the barber part, but you go and they'll give you a shave like it's like 1950. They'll lay you back and they'll put a warm towel on your face. They give you a shoulder massage. It's just, you look it up on YouTube. It's one of the most interesting things you could possibly do. The guy was doing something really weird with my ears. I don't know how to describe it. Got to the end of it, maybe a 20-minute ordeal, and ordeal's the wrong word, 20-minute experience. And I asked how much it was, and it was only 100 rupees, so it was about $1. $1. When we visited the brothers who ran these private Jesuit schools, one of the schools that we went to, we asked what the yearly tuition for a student to attend one of these schools, and it was the equivalent of $50 US for a child to receive a quality education in a private school. The amount of impact that we can have is enormous from just a small act of charity, a small act of giving. In the morning at the Mass that we went to, the first day that I got there on time, I got to hear a sermon. And one of the pastors one of the fathers rather, was speaking about the Sermon on the Mount. And he gave a quote from a sermon from Oscar Romero, who was a priest in El Salvador who was murdered because of his activism amongst the poor in El Salvador. And this speech, which is a speech that has been with me periodically throughout my life, through college and then beyond into divinity school, this speech he quoted from, and I'd like to share this speech with you. Oscar Romero said, "It helps now and again to take the long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is also beyond our vision. This is what we are about. We plant seeds that will one day grow. We water seeds that have already been planted, recognizing their future promise. We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in that. This enables us to do something and to do it well. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We are not master builders. We are workers. We are ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future, not our own."
Now, just to clarify one thing, the Jesuits ran 2 schools in Mungad, the city where we were staying. One was a private school, and that private school, that tuition was about 25,000 rupees a year, which is about $250 a year. But the public schools also had tuition.
Oh, I see.
This is the thing. The public school tuition was 4,000 to 5,000 rupees a year. And so one of the things that we do in AIA is we give scholarships to cover the cost of that public school tuition. So the day laborers, a lot of these people in the city community are day laborers. They don't own the land that they farm, as this is an agricultural community. It's very rural in India. And the average wage for the women, they said, who worked as day laborers, between 500 and 600 rupees a day, or $5 or $6. And for the men, they can earn 700 to 800 rupees a day, $7 to $8. So to pay 4,000 or 5,000 rupees per child to go to school can, for a lot of these families, be a burden that is a disincentive to send their kids to school. And so to think about it, that us spending $40 to $50 gives a child a chance to potentially go to public school that they wouldn't have otherwise. I mean, that's a drop in the bucket to be able to give a child an opportunity to have a different life out of that community. That's one of the things we support. Now, another thing that we support over there are what are known as tuition centers, what we would call after-school programs. After the school day is ended, most of the parents, of course, are still working. And the nuns that work directly with this community said without an after-school program, most of the kids then run around, they're not doing their homework. A lot of the parents aren't very good about encouraging the kids to study. Again, this is a lot of cultural, of marginalization and oppression over a long period of time. There aren't the same values around education in this community that there are in, say, the community here in Wellesley. And so the tuition centers give the kids an opportunity after school to sit down with instruction, to do their homework, to carry on instruction until the parents get home in the evening. And we have the chance to visit these tuition centers, and so AIA actually pays for the instructors for tuition centers in this area. And we went there and visited them, and here you had kids, elementary school age kids with these beautiful smiles on their faces, welcoming us there. And some of these places where they had their after school programs, again, they're not the fanciest of areas. But for the kids, they sort of took it in stride. I remember we were in one place late at night. This was like 7 o'clock at night. And it was the most humid place I've been. It was like 100% humidity. I was about to die in the corner. The kids, of course, didn't bother them. And then the lights went out, power went out, and the kids were like, oh, whatever. And they just carried on, doing their lessons. I was just remarkable at the resilience. And this is something that you support with your contributions.
We have the ability to make an outsized impact as long as we don't need to be the people who are the saviors. As long as we don't need to be the people who selfishly say, I'm only going to fix it if I can see it happen because of my direct efforts. If we have the long view that Oscar Romero calls us to say that we're going to plant seeds, that we won't see it fixed in our lifetime. But we are called to faithfulness, not fruitfulness. We're called to do small things with great love. Mother Teresa, who is a patron saint of India, and especially working among the poor in India, she always said, we can do no great things. We can only do small things with great love. One of the small things that our church, through AIA, was able to support was the purchase of something that most of us take completely for granted, which is just a medium-sized refrigerator. The medium-sized refrigerator was able to store food beyond the former capacity of the nuns. And so they were able to keep food fresher longer for the children who stayed at what was called a hostel. But children who lived in kind of more remote areas or who didn't have a safe place to live were able to stay with the nuns and the brothers in groups of about 60 people, 60 kids, and be closer to their school so that they could walk to school safely and have the support at night that they needed. So that's just a small thing that we were able to do to support these children in their education.
Yeah, the hostels, you have a situation where in a rural community, you might live 5 miles away, but if you don't have access to a car and the kids have to be at school in the morning, they stay in the hostel during the week, go home on the weekends. But that hostel, it's like a sort of in-town boarding school. That's one of the hostels that we support, is this hostel that the sisters run. One of the women that we ran across is this 17-year-old, almost 18-year-old woman named Saloni. And she's someone, this is a sort of typical story of the people that we support through AIA. She's someone who was supported for her tuition dollars through her elementary school years. Her father died in an accident. So her mother is the only breadwinner. She works as a day laborer. It's Saloni and her 2 younger sisters. We saw the home that she lives in, and in this village, it was a home of just a few rooms. Their extended family lives there as well. The main room serves as their living room, and then at night they put down their reed mats, and that's where the whole family sleeps, in that living room. And so not only do we support Saloni's tuition, but through the sisters, trying to encourage her to go to nursing school. To maybe have an opportunity to do stuff outside the community, an opportunity for a different kind of life. And again, this is all stuff that you all support through AIA.
Another really shining moment for all of us was being able to meet a young man named Ramnath, who was an early recipient of scholarship dollars through the African Indian Alliance. And Ramnath works as a mental health counselor, and he is able to provide necessary mental health counseling to children and adults. But he's someone who received funding from AIA. He could have gone anywhere in the world. He could have gone off and completely left his village behind, but instead he chose to come back and continues to support the work of the people in his village and to support the children there. That's the type of impact that we're able to have by providing a small amount of money to provide scholarships. This is something that's echoed through time and continues to have an impact in this community.
Yeah, Ramnath, a real success story of AIA over the last 20 years. He came here to visit and give a talk at the Hills Church about 15 years ago. So one of the things that I want to mention, because I think it's appropriate for us to mention, there's a long history of missionary work overseas. Not all that history is a good history, blunt. A lot of it involves cultural imperialism, trying to impose our way of doing things on different communities around the globe. One of the things that I'm impressed with about AIA is that we go over there and we partner with local people on the ground, people who spend all their lives working with these kids in these communities, and they're the ones that tell us what they need. So the sisters who are working with these communities, who know each child by name, can say, I know this woman Saloni, and this is what she needs to thrive. So again, it's not us setting the priorities. It's the sisters and the Jesuit brothers setting priorities, and we working with them as partners to try and lift up that community and give them what they need in order to thrive in this day and age.
So this sermon that we wrote together literally on kind of the back of a napkin.
Falling asleep on an airplane over 30 hours.
If there's one message that we want to leave you with, it's this. the things that you do in your life matter. Just because we can't fix systemic problems, that does not give us license to not try. Not being able to solve a problem doesn't give us the privilege of saying it's outside of our control and therefore we don't need to worry about it. Mother Teresa said, each one of you is just a drop in the ocean, but the ocean would be so much less without that single drop. The sisters who go to these small remote villages and work with these children, they know each one of them by name because each one of them is important. Each one of them is a mirror that reflects the face of God. Each one of you is a mirror that reflects the face of God. And in these small acts of kindness, these small acts of charity, where we are able to have outsized impact on people's lives, each dollar that we give to support AIA is also just a drop in the bucket. It's also just a drop in the ocean. But the ocean would be so much less without that drop as well. And so we hope that this experience that we have will continue to inspire us through sermons and through the stories that we tell. We'll have a time of sharing pictures. Kelly Ford and Stephen Patrick, who also traveled with us, I'm sure are excited to share what we've learned. This is just a brief slice of the experience that we had. So in the fall, we'll have a time of sharing more about our experience, including pictures. But I hope that this small trip that we took, this very brief trip, will help to strengthen the relationship between the sisters and the brothers who are on the ground doing this important work and who are living the demand, the call of Jesus to not just store up treasures for ourselves, but instead to build up treasures in heaven. Amen.